Hello there, Eagles fans, and welcome back to our Eagles Therapy Podcast. I'm Basil.
And I'm Baz.
And we are recording, Thursday? Yeah, Thursday, December 5th, 2024. Dad, we're looking for another week of exciting football, right, Dad?
For sure, yes. It's going to be a good one. We had a good game tonight, but it's definitely going to be a good game. A good weekend of games, I think. We're going to separate. We're going to see what's happening.
I think so, too. Yeah, obviously we're recording on Thursday night. We're recording before the Packers and the Lions game. We're very excited for that. I was telling my friends in my group chat with the fantasy group and everything like that, I'm like, man, this is probably the most excited I've been for a game that doesn't have the Eagles in it all season. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, all day. I know the Eagles aren't playing, but the whole time I was excited as an Eagles game. I was just like, man, I'm really excited for today. It was my day off of work, and I was just like, man, I can't wait to watch that game. But obviously, if you're watching this right now, you already saw the results of that game. So we'll see tomorrow what's going on there, but. Big week for us. Big week for the Eagles to continue their win streak. Obviously, right now, an 8-game win streak after defeating the Baltimore Ravens, the awesome offense of the Baltimore Ravens, and holding them to 12 or 19 points, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But big game.
Past that now.
Yeah. But big game coming up this week. This is one of those games that you don't want to look past the opponent. We talk about there was a big game last week. There's a big game next week against Pittsburgh.
Right.
And there's a game that falls in between. And you can't look past this team because they're playing pretty well as of late.
It's coming off 3 games, the Commanders and then the Rams and then the Ravens. So there's been 3 tests, if you will. And,
I'm talking about the Panthers, I mean.
Oh, okay. But, they'll just a letdown this week against the Panthers. You don't want to overlook this week, just think this is going to be an easy game or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, we're going to give a shout out to the Eagles fan club of Colorado Springs. Plug them. Hopefully they'll see you at Rhinos on Sunday since the game is starting at 11 o'clock here. Back home in Philly, it's at 1 o'clock. Dad, do you have a weather report for us?
Yeah, it's going to be, it's not, they say it's going to be a great day of football, so that's good. But, high of 50, no rain, no anything like that. So it's going to be a decent day. We're getting ready. We're getting used to the temperatures by now. 50's not cold anymore. 40's not cold anymore. So low of 37. It's going to be a day game. So, yeah, it's going to be fine. I think Monday it's supposed to get wet and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, Eagles all time against the Panthers are 8-5 in the playoffs. Unfortunately, 0-1. Now I know you kind of had something you wanted to say about that 0-1 loss.
Yeah, when we played them, I think it was 0-3.
It was the season of 0-3. It was January of 0-3.
Yeah, my brother will remember this. That was the game where we lost. Was a very, very low score game.
14-3.
And it's when the NFL changed the rules because they were holding our guys so much that the NFL had to change it because, we had a good team going into it and then they just were grabbing shirts all day long. And they changed the rules then to start calling off defensive holding and things like that, which really wasn't there before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pivotal game. I mean, a lot of us old guys will remember that's what happened because we had really good team, not really strong wide. I think Pinkston was one of our wide receivers. Freddie, what's his name with the belt? Freddie.
Freddie Mitchell, yeah.
But yeah, those guys, they weren't very strong receivers, so they just got clamped down and held. And, after that game, the NFL changed some rules or injected some rules or something. But, we hate losing to them. The Panthers are pretty good in the early 2000s, and, of course, we were too. So
that was the last NFC Championship game we made before reaching the Super Bowl the next year, correct? That was the 2003.
3 of 3 in a row, and then we got to the Super Bowl in 2004.
The next year, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of sad to look at, 14-3. I kind of looked at the history of the Eagles and Panthers, as I always do, and it's kind of funny to see. There was a brief time in the early 2000s, kind of after that NFC Championship game. We won 3 straight from 2004 to 2009. Aside from that, very evenly matched not rivalry. I'm not trying to say matchup. 8-5, like I said, and if you take away that 3-game losing streak, it's 5-5. 3-game winning streak, right? It's 5-5, and the way that works out is win loss, win loss, win loss, win loss, win loss, win. So
that's crazy.
It's back and forth completely between these two, with the Panthers and Eagles going back and forth. So kind of funny to see because it's again one of those teams that you don't think about as much as other teams. I know the Panthers are a little bit more of a newer team in the NFL.
They are.
Starting back in, 1995, 96. I wish I knew.
Expansion franchise, too. They weren't a team that ran from their old city and set up in a new town. It was one of the I guess you'd call an original franchise or
Yes.
expansion franchise where they held a little extra draft and stuff.
About in 1993, actually. So,
Okay.
wow, just as old as my sister Mary. But, first season was 95, though. So, 95 was their first season. And that's when they were back in the NFC West, which is just funny to think about now. They're, of course, in the NFC South. It's weird for me to always think, before I was born, how different the conferences and divisions were. Like, the Cardinals, of course, once were in the NFC East. When
yes,
we were 5
for many years,
It's like, why? What? I don't understand. It's just funny how that always works. So over the last 25 years, not much has changed. We're 7-5 against them. Just take away one win. We talked about that matchup, most recent matchup between us back in 2021. Not much of a memorable one. Very low scoring game as well, as we were talking about that NFC Championship one. 21-18, I guess you wouldn't say it's low scoring, but not really very high scoring. I know that was an early game in 2021, I believe. Let's see, what was I had the month here, the date of it, sorry. Right. October 10th. So, it was an early game in 2021. So, that was one of the early games of me living here, and you were back in Phoenix. So, we were starting kind of getting used to not watching the games together back then.
So funny, though, because sometimes we talk about games, and I remember that game.
Immediately.
And even a few of those games you brought up, I was like, gosh, I can't remember. We played them that recently. Yeah. But so that's kind of odd how, obviously, it's not one of our rivals, and it's not a game that, not a team I really hate. Like we all have our teams that we hate.
Yes,
we want to beat them bad, but they're just one of those teams that I remember when they first came on. Was kind of a fan of them. It was this kind of a new team. You want to see them do well, and I believe they made the playoffs early on in their lifetime of career.
Yeah,
which is different because some teams haven't been in the playoffs for 20 years and back in those days. So, it's just interesting that most of those games are just uneventful, and I really don't have a strong feeling for them one way or the other.
Well, I felt bad because I was definitely cheering against the Panthers when they played the Broncos in 2015 Super Bowl because I loved Peyton Manning, if you remember that one. And Cam Newton, I liked Cam Newton, but I was definitely a bigger Manning fan, so it was kind of hard. But Cam Newton, he's one of those players that you felt like, man, he started off so strong in his career, and then it really fizzled quick. Like, after that Super Bowl loss, it was just a dead drop.
Hey, say that. So that would be like almost 10 years ago.
Almost. That's crazy.
That is crazy because for a person like myself have some children, you kind of gauge your thing on how your children are. Yeah. And then after your children grow up, you kind of gauge on where you are with football.
Yeah.
And it's that long ago that he was actually a
MVP?
Huge player.
Yeah.
He was gigantic that year.
That was the last Super Bowl we watched before I went to college.
Okay.
Because 2016 was the Falcons, Patriots, unfortunately, and then ours in 2017. So that Broncos one when they beat the Panthers the last Super Bowl we watched before.
Whipping.
But we met them week 5. And we beat them 21-18 in the Bank of America Stadium. So it was at their home.
Right.
And, that was a kind of a back and forth game. Nothing really to write home about. But I remember some interceptions that game. I remember towards the end of that game, ironically enough, Miles Sanders, who now plays for the Panthers, we ran out of bounds when we were trying to run the clock out.
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
I remember he ran out of bounds, I think twice.
Right.
And the announcers even were like, what is he doing? Like,
down.
And we were like, what is going on? So, ironically enough, he plays for the Panthers now. He's on injured reserve.
Right, I heard that
this year. But, kind of a funny game that I remember. I think we had a cornerback that – remember that one that we talked about on the podcast? He cried. He was crying about, the Eagles, they were too hard for me. Do you remember?
Oh, wow.
I think he had an interception in that game. I don't remember exactly if it was him.
Okay.
But I remember him being kind of – what was his name? Hold on. I have it here.
Right.
Steven Nelson.
Okay.
Remember he went on Slay's podcast and was saying, the Eagles fans, I couldn't do it. I couldn't deal with it. They were too much for me. And it was like, okay, well.
We had him for just a short little
time. 1 year, only 1 year.
I remember that now.
Yeah. Let's get into Dad, your player of the game, player to watch for the game.
Okay, well, I've been listening to a lot of stuff this week, and the guy I'm going to be keeping my eye on is Alex Hunt because he played well. We didn't think we were going to get much out of him this year, or if he was even going to play a third-round pick. A lot of times those guys will just sit on the practice squad, and you hope to develop them. He's had to come in because we've had some injuries in that. And he looked great. I mean, I thought he looked fantastic. Kind of a stand-up defensive end, almost like a linebacker that's sneaking up to the line. But he did a great job. He can help contain Jackson really well. Got himself that half sack on that one play that Bond made. It was amazing. And they kind of jumped up so he couldn't throw it. And there was great coverage downfield. And actually took him out of field goal range because they shanked one after that. But I'm hoping that, I saw some plays he made. And I'm hoping to keep an eye on him just to see how he does number 58 and just see how he continues to grow, hopefully in his offense or in his defense, and continue to put pressure, on Bryce Young and maybe get a sack or two.
I like the number 58.
I do too.
I have to say, I know I'm interrupting.
It is.
Number 58 is good. It's Trent Cole. Jordan Hicks was 58. That might be the end of the main list, but I really like the number 58, especially on an edge rusher, not just a linebacker. Was Ike Reese 58?
Gosh, I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm going off the rails.
That's okay.
I like the number 58 on an edge rusher. And, I like what Jalix Hunt's putting out there.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this before. It's not like we need him to come in and be our number one. Oh, he needs to get 10 sacks. No. He's already got 1.5 sacks. And, the one was earlier in the year, but this half last week was great. Yeah. And I thought he played a really, really good game.
He made some good tackles. He helped turn King Henry inside instead of letting him get the outside. So
he was great against the run.
He did really well with his the lineman that was blocking him at the time. He seemed to push him where he wanted to push him, even though he may have lost a few of those battles. But he just continued to look really well. And I thought, anything we get out of him is kind of a bonus. And now you want him to be a guy.
It's true. It's true. At one point, it felt like it was like, well, whatever he does well is a bonus. But now you're like, oh, this guy could be a big part. He could be really good.
Yes.
And I'm trying to pull up real quick his snap counts. Let's see, Jalix Hunt. 35 snaps. It's almost 50%.
Yeah,
that's great.
I heard him talking about that earlier.
That's more than I expect from him.
Yes.
And that's phenomenal. If he's getting half a sack there and a couple pressures.
And he's another one of the rookies. And, we're talking third-round pick, so we had a killer in the first, a killer in the second, and now maybe a killer in the third,
True.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny how, at the time of the draft, you're like, oh, that was good or that wasn't good, and, stuff like that. And it's funny, you have to get further away from it to really see. Yeah. But now Howie Roseman's last 5 or 6 drafts are looking unbelievable.
Yeah, I saw a list with the first 2 picks of the last 5 drafts.
Yeah, the biggest miss is Reagan.
9 out of 10 are playing.
Yeah, that's
and they're impact players.
Yes,
except for
Rager.
We don't say that.
Imagine if he drafted Justin Jefferson there. I don't want to. I
won't, because they did one of the shows I listened to speculated on it. But the thing that they said is, if we had gotten him, the team would be a total different team, right?
We wouldn't gotten AJ. We probably wouldn't have gotten Devontae. Yes.
I mean, it's just the way they're saying it. Just how because we would have probably drafted this instead of that. So
it's true. But you
live in the present, right? I mean, you just have to go with what you get.
Yeah, it's crazy looking at these last drafts now. And now Nolan Smith's looking great. Jordan Davis is coming up even better.
Yes.
We knew Jalen Carter right away was going to be amazing.
But I mean, he's really using
he's playing all pro level. I mean,
phenomenal. Yeah.
I don't like to use the word all pro often. You know what I mean? That's not something I like to say very often. That's a different level. He's playing an all pro level.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
Pro Bowl is one thing, but all pro is the standard you're looking for.
Yeah. Speaking of Pro Bowl, I think I texted you the other day. Did you vote? Have you voted at all?
No, I have not. So.
I've voted about 20 times for all Eagles, and then I voted once non-biased. Completely who I thought should go.
Right.
My exact who I wanted, who I think should go. Right. Because sometimes I just go through and I pick all the Eagles.
Just a popularity contest. Or
yes.
The guy was good 4 years ago, and you're like, wait a minute, what about now, this season?
Yeah, I went through and I did one vote of everyone who I actually thought deserved to go. But yeah.
I got you.
All right, let's get into some matchups of this game. So we talked a little bit about, this is not a game you can really look past. This is a team that's playing a lot better. Their quarterback, Bryce Young, the young guy, second year. Funny thing, I was looking into some research about him, and it's well documented. Him and C.J. Stroud, they've been friends since high school.
Oh, okay.
Really good friends. They both went to high school in the same, not division,
same area.
Their teams played against each other one time, but they weren't playing yet. So they've known each other forever. But Bryce Young. Young quarterback. He's been playing really well the last 5 games. 6 total touchdowns, only 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions.
Season?
I'm sorry, 7. No, just the last 5 games.
Okay.
The last 5 games. I'm sorry, 7.
He's been playing a lot better.
Yeah, 7 total touchdowns over the last 5 games. He had a rushing one, and only 3 turnovers. So playing really well ever since he was benched. He was benched for Andy Dalton, and that turned out really bad. And he's playing a lot better. Not Pro Bowl, All Pro, stuff like that we were talking about. But he's playing a lot better, and it's nice to see. But not this week. Let's shut that down.
Right. And I know he had 2 games in a row there where he almost beat some pretty good teams. And maybe a playoff team or here or there. But they couldn't contain it, but they made some big plays at the end of the game, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully he does not, like you say, have a great game this week.
Definitely. Yeah, you're right. The other big thing, this is a team that almost beat Kansas City.
Yes,
came down to the wire with Tampa Bay with a costly fumble, unfortunately. But
right.
You're right. They Tampa Bay, they're a fringe playoff team, and Kansas City's top 3 team in the league, so it's a big deal.
But Kansas City's been playing tight with everybody this year. It's just kind of odd. It's just odd,
frustrating. But let's get into the offense for us, our matchups. So Panthers, number 1. Panthers are the worst rush defense in the league. And obviously, we're the best. Well, I guess now we're the second best, or I think we are still the first. I don't remember.
Yeah,
in rushing yards per game, we're the best. Right. 188. They're the worst. They allow a lot. 166 a game as an average. This is one of those games that we talk about. One team's the best, one team's the worst.
Right.
Maybe This is one of those games that I want to say, don't let that happen.
Right.
This is a game I want us to run. We need to run. Right. Because this is, I don't like to say it because I don't like to jinx things, but this is one of those games that there's a fear factor in it for me where you're not playing against a top team, you're not playing against a tough team, and then someone gets hurt. And you know what I mean? Like
there's penalties and it slows the game down. But you know what I mean? It slows the game down. All of a sudden you're like, we need to jump out to this big lead. And
remember the Saints game 2 years ago?
I do, yes.
That's exactly how I felt.
The first quarter lasted for 2 hours.
We went into that game, I know, with Gardner Minshew, so it's different, but it just that was one of those games where it's like, man, we really shouldn't even be in the same conversation as these guys. But then Josh Sweat gets hurt. Then this guy gets tough. And then AJ, it's just this is one of those games to me.
And it was a slow first quarter. I just remember looking at you, man, this has been like 35 minutes for the first quarter.
There were other teams hitting the half. Other games were hitting the half before we finished the first quarter. But this is one of those games we need to run, we need to get the clock out, and we need to get our starters out of this game. That's how I completely feel about it. I don't want any starters in this game at all at the end.
We don't need to win by 40.
No.
But, the success in this week would be win a comfortable game and have everybody out by the fourth quarter.
100% agree.
And have Shipley running the ball and have this lineman in there and have that defender play because, oh, boy, he needs some time, that kind of thing.
Especially because next week we're going to be playing against one of the toughest teams as far as not tough as in great. I mean tough as in tough.
And it's been, 8 straight weeks without a break. And so we hopefully we can get them to take a little rest here like at the end of the game. So, yeah.
Next thing on the Panthers, well, for us on the offense, our matchups. Panthers, I think they have a pretty solid secondary as far as like our wide receivers playing against them. I look at them, and there's no names that pop out as like, oh, well, that's Pro Bowl, All Pro, or anything like that. Right. But let me name these names for you. J.C. Horn. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a first-round pick a couple of years ago. Yes. Hasn't really lived up to the first-round pick, but he's not a slouch. Like it's not like, oh, well, he sucks. No, he's not all pro, but he's just playing okay. Xavier Woods.
Okay.
So he leads their team in interceptions with 3. He was on the Cowboys for a little bit. He's an undrafted player from a while ago, but he also is one of those names that once I saw it, I'm like, oh, he's there. I know him. And then Jordan Fuller, you know that name?
Yeah.
Yep, strong safety for them. And then their other corner, Michael Jackson. I'm sure you've heard the singer.
Yeah.
He came back to play for the Panthers. But no, it's a pretty solid secondary. Not top tier, but
they got a rookie on there too, don't they?
I heard somebody say something. Unless it's one of their nickelbacks or something like that. I didn't look into that. But
I heard somebody talking about it.
But yeah, as far as the secondary goes, I think it's actually that's a pretty good secondary. Solid is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's great. It's great.
Slouches.
But I think it's just one of those secondaries that I look at and I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually not that bad.
Right. But the good news on that is we've got so far Devontae's played practice the last 2 days.
Yes.
Relatively, everything's clean. Of course, Goddard will be out, so we're going to be moving on that part with the tight end. So hopefully Alcantara can continue where he was when we needed him the last time Goddard was out. So, but yeah, they should be having success in the running game should open up some of the passing game just to continue to move the ball. But we kind of just don't want to hit any roadblocks. We just want to kind of do your job, do your business. I know Sirianni's going to have them ready. He's going to have them not looking past this game because this kind of stuff happens, but usually doesn't happen when you have a young team like this. And knowing what happened last year, at this particular time in the season, let's get right past that and just continue the rolling. I mean, they've been blowing out good teams, so let's play where we're supposed to play here.
Yeah. Let's get into some defensive matchups. Our D-line versus their offensive line. Surprising stat that I saw. Panthers only been sacked 21 times this year. I was genuinely surprised. It's actually
relatively low.
It ranks as, I believe, 4th or 28th in the league, 5th least. What am I trying to say? Yes. So they're one of the least sacked teams in the league, which is genuinely surprising because you just think if you're one of the worst teams, well, then
teams would tee off on you.
Yeah, exactly. So I was surprised to see they've only been sacked 21 times this year. What do you got to say about that?
It is surprising, like you say. Now, I don't know, because usually you think if they're 3-9, which they are, they're losing. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, especially late in the game. But maybe teams are just up by so many points that you're just kind of sitting back.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that we'll give you the short pass, we'll give you this. We're just not going to let you get in the end zone. So, I mean, that's really how you could play it, and that's kind of the way that we may play it this week. Just kind of not blitzing 6 guys. Let's just sit back and maybe just try and get some interceptions, hopefully.
Yeah.
But not really send 7 or 8, send 4 like we've been doing. And just cover, with the other 7 guys. So, I mean, that's the safe way, especially considering, if the score is where we expect it to be.
Where we'd like to be.
Yeah, where we expect it to be.
Next thing, the run game. So their run game isn't all that great. It's ranked at 24th at 105. But Chuba Hubbard has really had himself a pretty darn good season. I think it's his quarterbacks running that have kind of brought the team rushing down.
Right.
But Chuba Hubbard, I would know because he's one of my running backs in one of my leagues. But aside from that fumble he had last week to Tampa Bay,
that was pretty brutal.
He's had a pretty solid season. I should have had his stats ready, but I think he's had a really good season. Here we go. 189 carries, 919 yards.
That's a lot.
4.86 average, and 7 touchdowns. So 3 fumbles to go along with that. So that's pretty tough.
That's a good negative.
But yeah, right. But 7 touchdowns on the season. Pretty solid season, especially for a guy that's on what many consider to be one of the worst teams in the league, whatever number you want to put him at. Right. Pretty darn good player. I think he's a top 10 running back, and I would say toward the bottom of the 10.
I wouldn't have guessed he was close to 1,000 yards. That's pretty darn good.
Absolutely. I 100%.
12 games, that's not bad.
Which really puts more into perspective on that offensive line. They've only get sacked 21 times, and they've got an almost 1,000-yard rusher. So they're really not as bad as you think. Sometimes things just go the wrong way, and a quarterback goes such a long way in this league.
But if you had played these guys in October, it would have been kind of a sneezer. But in this particular time of the year and what we're looking at, and hopefully, like you say, we can keep the intensity up because sometimes it's not so easy to keep that up there. So hopefully they can. And but with the way our run D has been, I mean, even last week with Henry, they didn't really blitz gap or anything like that. They just said 4 guys, and they kind of handled them pretty well.
Yeah. Next matchup for the defense to watch. Pretty solid group of wide receivers, I would say. So number one, the big one that everyone would know, Adam Thielen. Yeah. Now he's only played 5 games this season, so he's been a little bit injured, but recently he's played a lot better. On the season, 19 receptions, 265 yards, only 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But like I said, only 5 games going there. And with
he can still catch, but I just don't think he has any legs left. So,
yeah.
He catches it down and out 20 yards or whatever. He's not going to make any moves to get around you and they bust it off.
Let me see. As long as a 36, which, isn't, insane. But
he at one point he was amazing. That guy.
Oh, I remember.
Still can catch the ball great. I mean, a great catch last week.
Yeah, his catch percentage right now is 73.1%. But you never know what that means with how many quarterbacks. All the quarterbacks in the early bad play they had. But also in their wide receiver room, 2 rookies, Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker. And Xavier Legette was the first round pick. He leads the league he leads their team in yards. Only 393 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like I said, these aren't eye-popping numbers, but it's important to note that as of late, these are the guys that have been playing a lot better. Right. Last few games for Legette include 53 yards, 56 yards, 40 yards, 33 yards and a touchdown, 34 yards and a touchdown. So, I'm not saying anything about, these numbers are coming off the chart, but they're getting the job. They're getting not the job done because they're not winning, but they're still playing better than you'd expect.
Who's gonna be on? What do you think? Q on Thielen or probably not?
Well, what cornerbacks don't travel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Play their side.
Slay plays the right side and Quignon plays the left side. And I don't know if that's because of what Slay likes to have. Yeah. But I remember there was the time when Slay did travel for us. But then when we got Bradbury and he was really good his first year, we didn't have to do that. So it feels like we haven't traveled in the last few years, but maybe going forward one day. But right now, they're just set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cooper's the only one that travels because he travels with whoever's in the slot. That's it. You know what I mean?
Or goes in motion.
Exactly. Yeah. And good thing they have another good player on their team, sort of Jatavian Sanders, their tight end. Only 302 yards in the season, but he's also played a lot better as of late. So that's what I'm talking about right now.
They're building. That's what's happening now. They're getting some confidence. They're playing a little bit better. So I mean, hopefully we can just shut them down early. And
absolutely,
again, we've been generating so many turnovers as far as fumbles go, but we're just not getting those picks. So hopefully we can get a couple fumbles and recover them ourselves.
Yeah. And then the matchup of the game for me, this is going to sound dumb. This isn't a defensive matchup. This is actually for our offense. On the Panthers team is Jadeveon Clowney. Very, very well-hated player in Philadelphia.
I agree.
If you don't know, I'll point out the obvious ones. Number one, he gave Carson Wentz a concussion on an illegal hit on the ground, which no penalty was called. Yeah. And it was the game against Seattle in which Wentz got taken out, and it was our playoff game, and we had to send Josh McCown in, who is Josh McCown. We couldn't do anything. Yeah. So that was a killer. And then before that, it was the year before that, when he was on Houston, he had a brutal face mask call against Nick Foles. One of the most blatant face mask I've ever seen in my life, and it was not called. There was no penalty. So two major penalties against us that weren't called.
I know that call you're talking about.
And it's funny because it's like Eagles fans just know. He knows how much we hate him. I just can't stand this guy.
He's on the downside. He's playing the back nine. He's not
only 3.5 sacks this season.
Yeah, and that's his game is the sack.
Oh yeah. Who is second in sacks for the Panthers this year?
No,
Charles Harris. He doesn't play for the Panthers.
He plays for the Eagles.
Who sacks for him?
Man, we'll see if he gets in there.
I was going to ask you. You think he plays this week?
No, I think so. I think it's possible. Why not bring him up? And with what's going on, we got a few spots open, right?
Well, the only reason I say is because with Sidney Brown is kind of showing up on the injured reserve, right? Or not the injured reserve, but the injury report, and so is Reed Blankenship, of course, with his concussion. So
I doubt Reed will be out there. Slay might be back. Either way, if Slay's I don't know.
Yes, Slay was listed as a full participant, but no, with Reed not playing and possibly Sidney Brown not playing, there's definitely room for him. So I think you would bring him and possibly a practice squad safety into the game.
And then who knows if I don't know if our punt returner is going to be playing Covey because he's got the neck thing.
Yes,
I don't know if he's
back
full.
He was back at practice, I believe, today with a limited participant. So we'll see there. But
just saying, they might bring him up and just have somebody else take the punts.
Yeah, probably
Simply or whatever.
I don't know. But yeah, so Jadeveon Clowney, the only upside is that Jadeveon Clowney is on the practice injury report right now, too. He didn't practice yesterday or today. When I say bright, I know people are going to get mad at me saying I'm cheering for an injury. I usually don't, and I never would, but I really hate that guy.
He's going to be going up against Malata. He'll be on Malata's side, so hopefully Malata just pushes him into retirement.
Absolutely, yep. Let's go ahead and jump into the injuries. So we kind of talked about a little bit already. Expecting to go into the game without Reed Blankenship, possibly Sidney Brown. Britton Covey is a limited. Obviously, Dallas Goedert might be hitting the IR. And then Johnny Wilson, he was a limited participant as well the last 2 days. We'll see if he's coming to the game. But for the most part, some guys listed on here, Sweat. He was rest the first day. Concussion of Slay. Looks like he's full participant. So
Johnny Wilson's back. I'd love to see them start.
Yeah, well, his hamstring too, man. I mean, it's nice to see Devontae's back as a full participant. Yeah. You kind of wonder, is this one of those games where you play him, but maybe take it easy? Hopefully you go up early, stuff like that.
Get him a deep one here or there just to get it back in the sight and then just have him sit. I agree.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about some other games on the docket. So obviously the big one tonight, starting in about 5-10 minutes. So we're going to have to bust out of here.
Right on.
Reminder to like and subscribe and comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. Other games, number one, Falcons-Vikings, huge for playoff standings, especially depending on what happens tonight. Falcons, they're leading their division right now, but if they lose one more game, they drop down. Tampa Bay drops in if Tampa Bay wins. But they're tied right now. Falcons just have a tiebreaker because they beat them twice.
Right. Wow.
So we'll see what happens there. Saints-Giants, not much to write home about there. Tampa Bay playing against the Vegas Raiders. That's big as far as...
the Raiders are funny. I mean, they can beat teams that are good and then look terrible against other teams. They were that close on the Friday... The Black Friday game, that close to winning that game, but they blew it again. But so that's there might be some competition in that game.
Another big playoff game, or not playoff game, but implications on playoff. Seahawks and Cardinals. Seahawks, of course, won a few weeks ago against the Cardinals. This time they're in Arizona. Another one will have a lot to say about seedings and about who's going to win that division, that NFC West. Kind of looking like the weakest division in I guess the Falcons, the NFC South's looking like the weakest. So you never know. You don't know until we get there. And hopefully by then we have the number one seed and don't have to even worry about them. But Bills playing the Rams. The Rams are still trying to make a push. It seems like it may be a little bit too late for them to push their way into the playoffs. I think they're the third team looking outside the playoffs.
The Rams give the Bills a little trouble. I just bet they do. Just because the Bill, these teams become the number one team, and they're top of the rankings. And the Bills looked amazing the other night.
100%.
But they're also on a good streak going too. I could probably see the Rams pushing them a little bit.
I think they could, and I think they will. It's in L.A. That's a long way from Buffalo. It's travel and everything like that.
Yeah.
Bears playing the Niners in San Francisco. I'd like to see the Bears get the win there, keep on just beating the Niners season to death.
I don't think there's not much.
Yeah, there's not much talked about in either of those teams. And then the last one, including the NFC, at least the East, would show the Bengals playing the Cowboys. Nice to see the Cowboys lose again at home. The Bengals just kind of another one of those teams. Both of these teams seem to have their seasons kind of done with.
Yeah.
Not really sure what they're.
I think Cowboys on a 2-game win streak though.
I think they have a 2% chance to make the playoffs. I don't even know about the Bengals.
Yeah.
But I wonder when. Only one team in the NFC has been eliminated, whereas 3 teams in the AFC have been eliminated officially. So I wonder when more eliminations are going to start happening, possibly this week or next. We'll see more of that.
I could see Burrow lighting up that Dallas defense.
I would like to see it.
He's been good. It's just the team's terrible. Their defense is awful. It is. It's terrible.
I mean, they might let Cooper Rush put big points against them. They're terrible. Possible. Other sports, let's just go into Penn State. So going to be playing the Big Ten championship game on Saturday at 6 o'clock, playing against Oregon. Big matchup, big tough one, 1 versus 3.
Wow.
It'd be nice to see Penn State beat a ranked team, especially number 1, going into the college football playoffs. It'll be really fun, but we'll see what happens there. And then, Dad, you got anything else to say?
I know. I was saying something the other night. It was about a tentative bracket in the college where it would be ASU versus Penn State.
It'd be cool.
I don't know if that's going to play out depending on what happens this weekend.
Yeah.
It would be kind of cool because I somewhat follow ASU. And Penn State I've been following forever. So
ASU playing against Iowa State, and that's winner gets in.
Okay.
Because it's for the Big 12 championship, and I don't think the loser would be ranked way too low.
I can't follow these Big 12. It used to be the WAC. It used to be the West Coast. Now
I don't know.
It's all over the place now. It's just
I agree.
I don't get it.
The only one I really know is SEC. I'm like, okay, I kind of know the teams there. But when I hear Big 10 and Big 12, I'm like, there's weird. There's 24 teams in the Big 12.
I know.
I have no clue.
It is weird.
But, okay, let's say our goodbyes. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. If you like our Eagles Therapy podcast, do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and comment down below your predictions for the game. You can email us any questions at oureaglestherapy@gmail.com. But other than that, from all of us here at Our Eagles Therapy Podcast, I'm Basil.
And I'm Baz.
Go Birds.
Fly. Eagles fly.